He was doing what he has done many, many times before, many thousands. He goes to universities across the United States and challenges the anti-whites on the positions that they hold and defeats them in argumentation almost every single time. He trumps them in argumentation. And he was doing that again today at this university in Utah when a shot rang out. If you have not seen the video, do not watch it. I did not know anything was going on earlier today and saw this tweet come up and clicked on it, and there he was for the many thousandth of time out in the middle of a sea of people, many thousands of people showing up when he goes to speak places and debate with anti-whites that, of course, Charlie calls leftists, although every now and again, thanks to the rigorous efforts of this community and assiduous efforts, has used anti-white. And he just referred to the murderer of Irina Zaruska as an anti-white, and that he had killed Irina because she was white, which of course he did. And he was speaking today in a beautiful day in Utah, blue skies, clement temperatures, and an assassin's rifle rang out, and Charlie was shot in the throat, just to the left of his esophagus. The bullet obviously severing the veins and arteries in the neck, resulting in a horrific geyser of blood that you'd never want to see. The velocity of the round likely caused a vacuum, especially from a rifle. The velocity is such that it creates a vacuum inside the human body as the round passes through the flesh, carving out a much larger hole or damage inside the body than you can see, potentially destroying his entire spine and brain stem as it passed through his neck. And there was a moment right as he was shot. He was still standing, and his eyes went wide, his hands jerked up in the air, and then he fell off to his left. He was immediately attended to by supporters and his security team, which go with him everywhere. It's important to mention that Charlie has a security team, had a security team, because he has incessantly received death threats from anti-whites. This is how anti-whiteism operates. If they can't defeat you in argumentation, they have recourse to violence. Someone once said recourse to the blackjack. And so Charlie, though, believing so firmly that these ideas that we refer to as anti-white and anti-whiteism, and he occasionally, thanks to the assiduous work of individuals in this community, occasionally referred to also as anti-white ideas, were detrimental to our people, detrimental to this country, and in fact, destroying the country. And even though with the constant death threats and various other threats on his life and his family's lives, he continued to go to university after university to take on these people and defeat them in argumentation. He was immediately rushed to a hospital, so instantly receiving care and immediately rushed to the hospital. But of course, the damage done by the assassin's round could not be corrected. It couldn't be fixed. And so he passed away today, shortly after the assassin's bullet struck him. So who was Charlie Kirk? And I can't say that I'm a biographer on him. And there really hasn't been time to go into any depth about where he came from and what his goals were. But generally, I know that he was, I heard somebody mention that he was born in 93. I think he was 31 years of age. So a very young man. And became, by his own efforts, the voice, really, of two generations. Being in 93, that would put him at the end of the millennials and coming into the Zoomers. At 18 years of age, he founded the entity Turning Point USA. And he did it from his parents' garage. He wanted to go to West Point, I believe, but didn't make it. And he was not situated to attend university. He decided instead to get into the fight. He was born and reared, I think, in the suburbs of Chicago. And from the age of 18, built up this conservative entity to push back, mostly in the form of abstractions, against anti-whiteism, to do something noble with his life. He had immense success doing that. Ended up having, I think, around 3,500 chapters across the country. He had a followership of many, maybe in total of around 100 million followers. He's credited with bringing millions of people to Donald Trump, and specifically for the win in Arizona. And he had a wife, I believe a beautiful white woman, pretty confident, two beautiful little white children that are now left without their husband and father. And of course, this will be an ongoing tragedy and injury to Erica, the wife, and the two children for years to come. In fact, they were at the university when this happened. Thank good Lord that they weren't with Charlie. The former official, Jason Chaffetz, was there and was close enough to see everything happen and give his interpretation of where the shots came from. There was a gentleman, Zimmer, something of this nature, that was taken down, Zim, I think it was, who was taken down immediately. A white guy, older white guy, appeared to be at least an older white guy. He was up in the front row or near the front row of where Charlie was sitting and taking these questions. Charlie had just answered a question about gang violence in the United States. But they immediately took him down, and he thwarted the efforts of the security and law enforcement to ascertain whether or not he was the shooter. You all probably saw the videos of him saying crazy things about his rights or something like this. They've determined that he was not the shooter. Fortunately, but we don't know for sure, another suspect has been taken into custody, but the government is not saying whether this is 100% the shooter or one of the people involved in the assassination, which they believe came from an adjacent building on the campus, around 200 or so yards away. They do have, but they did not share, at least that I've seen yet, security footage at the university of a person, a very grainy, they said, security footage of a person dressed all in black. Some of the topography and the environment of the university and the surrounding area has been discussed, that there are many avenues for a shooter and assassin to escape after carrying out the assassination, to an airport, to an adjacent airport, to the adjacent mountains and the wilderness, probably even to change their clothing and walk right back out into the crowd and not go anywhere. As I said, if you haven't seen the video, I recommend to refrain from watching it. It's an image that will never leave you. We don't know who the assassin is, but of course we already have anti-whites coming out, both on the Democrat side and the Republican side, saying that we shouldn't jump to conclusions about what their motivation was. At least we have some Democrats coming out saying that violence should never be the course for a disagreement of ideas. But that's self-serving, because this is what they always advocate and argue for, is violence. Why was Charlie Kirk assassinated? Because, in my opinion, he troubled the objectives of anti-whiteism. He didn't regularly call it out as such. He didn't directly challenge it as anti-white, but you don't have to. You can think of, you remember Steve Scalise and so many other politicians at a softball game that a anti-white assassin were going to kill them all. You can think about how milquetoast people like Scalise are, and other Republicans. How little they actually inhibit, undermine, and slow down the advance of anti-whiteism, anti-white ideology, and the fulfillment of those objectives, which of course, as we see, in my opinion, with the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the murder of Irina Zarutska, is the biological erasure of Western kind and the white erasure of everything that we've ever created and produced. We live in a narrative, and so many people now across the internet, on the establishment media, politicians are using the word narrative, but they're not mentioning that the narrative is anti-white. They'll say, we didn't hear about Zarutska because it doesn't fit the narrative. When they leave it like that, it's no more than an abstraction. It's no more than a ephemeral, passing, insubstantial nothing. One narrative today, another narrative tomorrow. You have lived, if you live in Western civilization, your entire life within the anti-white narrative. And that's not going to change until a percentage of the white race comes together as a people and puts an end to it. There are folks out there, and I see, I had I had the great Franklin telling me about an individual that lost his mind today, suddenly started using racial slurs on his X account. This has been done, if you will. The frothing, wild frothing, anonymous rage has been done. It's been done for generations. It is toothless. It's ineffective. It accomplishes nothing. We should be angry. We should be angry about this. And we should use the energy engendered by that anger to do good works in the direction of the creation of a people, without which this will never end. This will continue. The fact that they assassinated Charlie Kirk means that there's nothing they won't do. There are no amount of people they won't kill. We were just covering the news of the AfD in Germany, a political party, a prediction that I made many times over the decades, that if you ever had a quirk of an anomaly, a case somewhere in a Western country where you could run candidates and get them elected that in some way will benefit the white race, albeit without even saying it, they'll just kill the candidates. And now we got news that the count might be up to 16 of them dead right before the election. So clearly, this isn't going to work. Those who might say, well, we're going to need violence. It's going to be violent. You're going to have to fight these people. Very well. If you want violence that is efficacious, it's going to have to be born out of peoplehood. It's going to have to be born out of unanimity of identity and the accessing and achieving of individual well-being by way of our group's well-being. Not because blacks are bad or Jews are bad or transgenders are bad. That isn't enough. It isn't enough because it doesn't create a people. I marvel at these conversations of people online talking about, well, we can finally talk and say how bad blacks are and how bad, and we're doing it just out in the online, out in the public. What do you mean out in the public? There is no difference between saying blacks are bad and Jews are bad online as there is when it's been done for generations in living rooms, in kitchens, at the kitchen table, in bars, at pubs, where people would confide in their confidants those sentiments. How is it no different? Because in both cases, it's anonymous. In both cases, when people have gotten together now with the internet and before the internet and complain vehemently about how bad this group or that group is, they did so under the understanding that their opinions would be kept private, anonymous. There is no difference between the private conversations in one's living room and the anonymous private conversations on Twitter. When your name is Aryan Cloudhopper, you are anonymous. There is not a revolution of being able to talk about how bad all these other groups are because your identity and the consequences of your thoughts are as private as they were when you were in that living room. Anti-whites will murder all of us. This was intended to be, and as a consequence, a spectacular and macabre message to anyone who will stand against anti-whiteism. I predict more anonymity and hostile comments online. I predict more balaclavas covering the face in street marches. Anger over this or subsequent matters. But that won't be the path to success. That won't be the path to overcoming this victimization. That won't contend with assassins of the future who might be coming for you. And that assassin might not even be because you have articulated an opinion publicly that's at variance with anti-whiteism. It might be they find you while you're sitting on a subway car without even knowing your name. Or maybe worse, it will happen to somebody you care about. So you say it's going to take violence. Well, if you want that violence to be effective in service to the recapture of our destiny, you're going to need a people. No more of this notion, which has never worked, of lone wolves or solo this or that. That has only ever redounded to the service of anti-whiteism and anti-whites. And I can't be to blame for so many others not being able to understand this. So all conservatives of whatever stripe, cucks, hardcore cucks, all of the schmucks, the anti-non-white crowd, they should take a long look. If you're still of the mind that this needs to remain abstract, that it needs to be about the ideas, and the ideas belong to no one, because you have disavowed everything the white race has ever created: the country, the founding documents, the founding fathers themselves, the philosophy, the literature, etc. If you're still of that mind, then watch the video of his assassination. If you're still of the mind that you need to wax for hours and every meeting and every get-together about Zionists or Jews or blacks and how bad they are, watch the assassination, because that's going to be you and those you care about if you ever pop your head up out of that anonymity, which I doubt you will. You need to be able, as we do and say here, to take a moral line with these people, with a set of concepts that undermine the psychological warfare that is anti-whiteism. If you don't do that, you're going to get more of the same. You're going to get more Charlie Kirks. You'll have more assassinations. You'll have more Irina Zarutskas. In fact, since she was stabbed in the throat, not long before Kirk was shot in the throat, there have been slews of other white people that have either been murdered by anti-whites or raped or beaten horribly, maimed, just in the days since then. It's getting worse for white people across the West, and worse is not better. Worse is just worse. No people has ever come out of bad times. We have the tools here that have proven successful. It's time for men and women of the West to stand up and do the right thing before it's too late. We don't need the whole white race. We only need a percentage to begin behaving as a people. And the rewards of that activity will attract other white folk to join us. Make sure you're one of those people so that we can put an end to the kind of spectacle that we witnessed at 1241 today, when an assassin's bullet ripped through the throat of a father and husband that is truly the voice of two generations for conservative thought, even going so far as a consequence of our efforts here to refer to these activities and individuals as anti-white. God bless Charlie Kirk for the good that he did. May God be with his wife, Erica, and those beautiful white babies now that their father is gone. Now is the time to slow down and appreciate the gravity of today and what it means for those of us who remain the targets of anti-whiteism, all white people, because you can't be anti-white enough if you're white. Appreciate the gravity, let it sink in, and then resolve yourself to work even harder for white well-being. I recall a quote from Patton: better to fight for something and die than live for nothing. Now's the time for us, especially in this community, to lean on each other, because undoubtedly there are some of us that are going to be feeling vulnerable, feeling scared, feeling angry, shocked by what happened. That has the potential to disorient a person. And that means that in whatever sadness you experience, whatever fear you experience, whatever disorientation, that you need to focus with that much more energy on the tools that liberate Western kind, that manumit our thinking from the psychological warfare that is the anti-white narrative that we live under, that does this to us, that exploits and oppresses us.